My name is Verity Hale, and I was 36 years old when my husband gave my seat at Thanksgiving to his ex-wife. I do not mean he forgot to pull out a chair for me. I do not mean someone miscounted place settings. I mean I walked into his parents' dining room carrying a cranberry orange bread pudding I had baked at 6 that morning, after 2 days of cooking for his family, and found my name card sitting beside a stack of paper napkins at a folding table near the kitchen. At the main table beside my husband was his ex-wife. Daphne had my chair. Daphne had the linen napkin. Daphne had the crystal water glass with the little slice of orange floating in it, because my mother-in-law liked things to look effortless after other women did the work. My husband, Callum, looked at me like I was holding up traffic instead of standing in front of 18 people with hot dessert in my hands. He gave me that small smile men use when they want witnesses to think they are being patient. Then he said, "It is just for today, Verity. Do not make this awkward." I looked at the folding chair. I looked at Daphne's hand resting near his plate. I looked at the seating chart on the sideboard where my name had been crossed out in pencil and rewritten near the kitchen doorway. Then I smiled. I served dessert. I thanked his mother for hosting. I left before coffee. And as I was putting on my coat in the hallway, Callum's father, Graham Pierce, came up behind me, looked straight past me at his son, and asked one quiet question. "Where is the prenup?" The whole house changed. Because for almost 2 years, Callum had been telling his family that I married him for money. He told them I controlled him with legal papers. He told them every dollar in our house came with a leash. But the prenup said something very different. It said I had waived any claim to his future business income. It said I had protected him from my family trust. It said I had paid $84,700 of his old business debt, cleared a lien from his failed catering equipment, and wired $162,000 toward the house where his family had just moved me away from my own husband. By the next day, the blue legal binder everyone mocked would be lying open on that same Thanksgiving table. And Callum would have to explain why the woman he called a gold digger was the only reason he still had a home to host one in. Before I tell you what happened next, welcome back to Hush and Tell Stories. If you have ever been treated like a guest in a life you helped build, this story is for you. Tell me in the comments what you would have done if your seat was given to the ex-wife, and subscribe if quiet truth is the kind of justice you understand. I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, in a family that never looked rich in the way people expect. I met Callum Pierce at a fundraising dinner for a culinary training program housed in one of our renovated buildings. He was selling restaurant equipment then: stainless steel prep tables, walk-in coolers, espresso machines, ovens that looked too clean to have ever met an onion. He had a warm voice, good shoulders, and the kind of laugh that made people at nearby tables want to be included. He was charming in a way that felt generous at first. He asked questions and remembered answers. He noticed when my glass was empty. He said my work sounded practical and beautiful, which was exactly the combination I wanted someone to see. "You make buildings useful again," he said that night. "That is rare. Most people just want their names on plaques." I liked him immediately. That was the first thing I should have been more careful with. Callum told me he was rebuilding his life after a hard divorce and a failed catering startup. He said the business failed because his partner mismanaged inventory and a supplier sued at the worst possible time. He said the divorce had been civil, mostly, though Daphne liked to stay connected to his family. He said he was starting over. "I am rebuilding, not broke," he told me on our 4th date, after his phone buzzed 3 times with a number he did not answer. There is a difference. I believed him. Not because I was foolish, because there is a kind of honesty that sounds real when it is unfinished. He admitted enough mess to seem transparent, and I filled in the rest with grace. The first time I saw the scale of Callum's financial trouble, we had been dating nearly a year. He came to my apartment on a rainy Thursday night with his shirt collar damp and a face that looked like he had been holding himself together with tape. He asked if we could talk. Then he sat on my sofa and took 3 folded notices from his jacket pocket. There was a collection letter, a demand from a supplier tied to the old catering business, a lien notice on equipment he no longer even had access to. The total was $84,700. I remember the number because numbers have a sound when they change the future. Callum covered his face with both hands. I was going to handle it before you knew. I sat beside him and asked, before I knew what. He looked at the notices on my coffee table and said that I was this embarrassed. There are moments in relationships where someone shows you a wound, and because it is real, you mistake it for the whole truth. Callum was ashamed. That part was real. His shame made me gentle, and my gentleness made me less suspicious than I should have been. He said the debt was strangling him. He said the interest was making it impossible to save. He said if the lien stayed active, his sales manager promotion might fall apart because the company did financial background reviews for certain vendor accounts. He did not ask me for money that night. That mattered to me then. It should not have mattered as much as it did. I asked what his plan was. He said he was negotiating. I asked if he had an attorney. He said attorneys cost money he was trying not to spend. I asked if Daphne had been tied to any of the debt. His jaw tightened. Daphne left before the ugly part, he said. She has a talent for that. I did not write a check that night. I called my attorney the next morning. Her name was Nola Keene. She had represented my grandmother for years and had the calmest voice of anyone I knew. Nola did not waste words or flatter feelings. When I told her I was considering helping the man I loved clear old business debt, she was silent for a long second. Then she said, "Love is not an accounting category, Verity. Tell me the facts." So I did. Nola asked for documents, not stories, documents. Debt notices, lien filings, settlement options, divorce terms, employment contracts, bank statements if Callum would provide them, and any written agreement before a cent moved. When I told Callum, he looked hurt and asked if I did not trust him. I told him I trusted paper more than memory. He laughed after a second, but not comfortably. The review took 2 weeks. Nola confirmed the debt was real, the lien was real, and the settlement offer was better than what litigation would cost. She also confirmed something else. If I paid it without documentation, it would become fog inside the relationship. People love fog when it hides who carried the weight, she told me. You need a prenup if you intend to marry him, and you need schedules attached. I was not engaged yet, but Callum had been talking about marriage. He had been talking about houses. He had been talking about starting clean. I believed in starting clean. I also believed in knowing who paid for the soap. When I told him I would help only if we documented everything and signed a prenup before marriage, his reaction came in stages. First came gratitude. He cried. He held my hands and said I had no idea what this meant. Then came pride. He said he did not want to feel bought. Then came fear. He asked if my family would always see him as a charity case. Then came relief so strong it almost looked like love. I will sign anything, he said. I just want a future with you without this hanging over us. I wanted to believe that sentence. The cashier's check was issued on a Monday morning, $84,700. I watched the teller print it and felt no thrill, no sense of power, only a heaviness. Money can solve a problem without healing what caused it. Callum came with me to send the payment. He stared at the check for a long time before it went into the envelope. I do not know how to thank you, he said. I answered, do not make me regret it. He looked wounded again, and I softened because that was still my habit. I paid the settlement. The lien was released. His credit improved over the next year. His promotion moved forward. People said Callum had finally gotten his footing back. Very few people asked who had held the ladder. The prenup was drafted 3 months before the wedding. Nola's office was in an old brick building downtown with tall windows and a conference table that had seen more family truth than most churches. Callum came in wearing a navy blazer and the expression of a man trying not to look cornered. The document was fair, more than fair. It stated that my separate family assets would remain mine. It stated I waived any claim to Callum's future business earnings, commissions, bonuses, or ownership interests if he ever started another company. It stated that neither Callum nor his creditors could claim against the Hale Trust. It also included schedules documenting premarital financial contributions already made. Schedule A listed the $84,700 paid to settle his business debt and release the lien. Schedule B listed the $162,000 I would wire toward the down payment on the house we were buying together. Schedule C stated that if we divorced within 5 years because of infidelity, financial concealment, or material misrepresentation, certain reimbursement provisions could be enforced. Callum read that part twice. Material misrepresentation sounds dramatic, he said. Nola looked at him over her glasses and answered, "Only if you plan to misrepresent something material." He gave a dry laugh. "I am just saying it sounds like a courtroom." Nola said, "It is a contract. Contracts are written for the day people stop being charming." I almost smiled. Callum did not. Graham came in near the end because Callum had asked his father to witness one of the attached schedules. I remember Graham standing near the conference room window, reading more carefully than anyone expected. He did not comment on the money at first. He looked at his son, then at me. "You are sure about this?" he asked. I thought he meant the legal terms. "I am," I said. He looked at Callum. "Are you?" Callum's face reddened a little. "Dad, it is paperwork." Graham signed as a witness to the schedule, acknowledging the debt payoff and down payment structure. His signature was careful, slanted, old-fashioned. Before he left, he paused beside me and said quietly, "Do not let generosity become something people call control." I remembered that line later. At the time, I thought it was kindness. Maybe it was also warning. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Blythe called and asked if I could make a few things because her arthritis was acting up. A few things became roasted carrots with orange glaze, cornbread dressing, green beans with almonds, cranberry sauce, 2 pies, and the bread pudding Callum loved. I did not mind cooking. I like cooking. There is peace in chopping vegetables when nobody is rewriting your character over the cutting board. I took off the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I brined turkey parts because Blythe wanted extra white meat for people who did not like dark. I made stock. I toasted pecans. I ironed the blue napkins Blythe asked me to bring because her dryer had left lines in hers. I labeled containers. I wrote reheating instructions on masking tape because I am the kind of woman who believes preventing confusion is also care. Callum watched me move around the kitchen and said, "You do not have to do all this." I looked at him. "Your mother asked." "I know, I just mean do not act resentful later." I stopped stirring. "Have I acted resentful?" He shrugged. "You get quiet." Quiet is not resentment. With you, it usually means you are keeping score. I turned off the burner. That phrase, keeping score, people say it when they benefited from you losing count. "I am cooking for your family," I said, "not building a court case." He kissed my forehead, which he had started doing whenever he wanted to end a conversation without losing it. "You know what I mean." I did, that was the problem. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke before 6. The house was dark, and for a moment it smelled like cinnamon, butter, and rosemary instead of tension. I baked the bread pudding last so it would travel warm. I packed the car with containers tucked in towels. Callum carried 1 bag, then took a work call on the porch while I loaded the rest. He wore a forest green sweater I had bought him the previous Christmas. He looked handsome. That irritated me because betrayal should make people look like what they are doing. In the car, he was distracted. "Daphne might stop by," he said, too casually, about 10 minutes from his parents' house. I looked out the window at bare trees. "Stop by Thanksgiving." "She is alone this year." Mom felt bad. "Did you know before this morning?" He tapped the steering wheel once. I did not think it mattered. That is not an answer. She was part of the family for a long time. So was I. He exhaled, "Please do not start." I almost laughed. I had not started anything. I was sitting beside casserole dishes and pies in a car full of food his mother had requested, being pre-blamed for a reaction to news he had hidden. "What does stop by mean?" I asked. "Dinner, Daphne is coming to dinner." "Yes, and you decided to tell me in the car." "I am telling you now." That was another sentence people use when they want credit for honesty, delivered too late to matter. I said nothing for the rest of the drive. Callum took my silence as cooperation. When we arrived, Blythe opened the door before I knocked. She was wearing a cream blouse, a strand of pearls, and an apron that had no stains on it because all the staining had happened in my kitchen. She kissed Callum's cheek first. "Happy Thanksgiving, darling." Then she air-kissed me. "Verity, wonderful, put those in the kitchen, would you? Daphne is helping me with the table." Daphne appeared behind her carrying silverware. In a rust-colored dress. At my husband's parents' Thanksgiving. Holding the forks like she had never left. She smiled. "Verity, you made it. Callum said you were." "Bringing half the kitchen." "More like 3/4, I said lightly. Her smile thinned. I walked to the kitchen. The counters were crowded with my containers. Blythe began opening lids and making approving sounds that somehow still felt like inspection. Daphne moved around the drawers without asking where anything was. I told myself to breathe. Then I saw the seating chart. It was on the sideboard in the dining room, handwritten on cream cardstock. Blythe did this every year because she liked order disguised as tradition. Names in neat columns, couples together, elders near the center, teenagers near the kitchen end. Callum Pierce was written near the center. Beside him was Daphne Morrow. My name had been written there first. I could see the faint shape of the V under the pencil eraser marks. Verity Pierce had been crossed out, not completely, but enough. Rewritten at the folding table near the kitchen doorway, between Callum's 16-year-old nephew and a stack of extra rolls. For a second, the room made no sound. Not because it was quiet, it was not. People were laughing in the den. A football game played somewhere. Blythe was giving Daphne instructions in the kitchen. Callum was talking to Everett. But inside me, something went still. Daphne saw me looking. Her voice was soft enough to pretend innocence. "Blythe wanted to keep the flow easy this year, you understand." I looked at her. There are women who apologize with their eyes when they accidentally hurt you. Daphne's eyes were not sorry. They were measuring the bruise. Callum came up beside me. "Verity," he said quietly. I did not look at him. "Why is Daphne in my seat?" "It is just for today." "Why is Daphne in my seat?" His jaw tightened. He glanced toward the den, where Everett and his wife were pretending not to listen. "Mom did the chart. Daphne knows Dad's dietary stuff, and she helps keep things moving. I cooked half the meal." "I know that." "She is sitting beside my husband." His voice dropped lower. "Do not make this awkward." That sentence did something useful. It ended the part of me still hoping he would correct it. I looked at the folding table, then at the main table, then at Callum. I smiled. "All right," I said. He blinked. He expected resistance. Maybe tears. Maybe a whispered argument he could later describe as a scene. He did not expect agreement. I picked up the bread pudding and carried it to the sideboard. Daphne watched me. Blythe watched me. Everett definitely watched me. Graham sat in his armchair near the window, one hand on his cane, his eyes moving from my face to the seating chart. He had been quiet all afternoon. Graham was often quiet, but this was different. This was the kind of quiet that listened. Dinner began with Blythe asking everyone to gather. I sat at the folding table. The chair was metal with a thin cushion tied to it by strings. The teenager beside me smelled like cologne and embarrassment. Every time someone needed extra gravy, rolls, a serving spoon, or more ice, they reached around me or asked me to pass something from the kitchen counter. Daphne sat beside Callum at the main table and laughed at family jokes that belonged to a version of him I had never met. She touched his sleeve twice. Not long, just enough. Callum did not move away. Blythe asked Daphne if she remembered the year Graham dropped the turkey. Daphne laughed and told the story better than Blythe did. Everett said, "Feels like old times." Nobody corrected him. I ate 3 bites of turkey I had not cooked and 2 bites of dressing I had. I passed the rolls. I refilled water for Graham when I noticed his glass was empty, because habits of care do not disappear just because people insult you. Graham looked at me when I set the pitcher down. "You brought the food," he said quietly. They gave her the seat. It was not a question. I answered softly, "Yes." His mouth tightened. That was all. After dinner, Blythe asked if I could help plate dessert. Of course she did. Daphne stayed at the main table, leaning toward Callum while he checked something on his phone. I went to the kitchen, removed the foil from my bread pudding, and cut it into neat squares. My hands were steady. That surprised me. Sometimes pain steadies you, when anger would make you shake. Blythe came in behind me. "You are being very quiet." I thought quiet was what everyone wanted. She looked uncomfortable for the first time that day. "Verity, Daphne being here does not diminish you." I placed a square of bread pudding onto a china plate. Moving my chair did that. Her lips pressed together. "You are making it sound intentional." I looked toward the dining room, where the seating chart still sat on the sideboard with my name crossed out. Did the pencil slip? She had no answer for that. Daphne came into the kitchen then, carrying 2 empty glasses she did not need to carry. "Everything smells wonderful, Verity." Callum always loved when someone went all out. Someone, not wife, not family, someone. I put whipped cream on the plate. He has always liked other people's effort. Daphne's smile faltered. Blythe said my name in warning. I picked up the dessert tray. "No need to worry. I'm not making anything awkward." I served dessert. That is the part I want you to understand. I served it, not because they deserved service, because the food was mine, the care was mine, and I refused to let them turn my work into evidence of weakness. I carried each plate calmly. Graham took his with both hands and said thank you like the words had weight. Callum barely looked at me. Daphne asked for a smaller piece, then ate all of it. After dessert, while Blythe started coffee, I went to the hallway and took my coat from the closet. The house had that post-holiday warmth, dishes clinking, men talking too loudly, women pretending not to notice who helped. I wrapped my scarf around my neck. Callum appeared near the archway. "You are leaving." "Yes, Verity, do not do this." I almost smiled. He had given away my seat, let his ex-wife sit beside him, watched me serve his family, and still thought the first action in the room belonged to me. "I am tired," I said. "That is going to look dramatic." "Then tell them I learned from the seating chart." His face tightened. "You are impossible sometimes." "No," I said. "I am inconvenient when I remember." Graham's cane sounded once against the hardwood behind him. Callum turned. His father stood at the hallway entrance, face pale with something that looked less like age and more like disgust. "Callum," Graham said. "Dad, not now." "Where is the prenup?" The hallway went quiet. Not completely. You could still hear football from the den and dishes from the kitchen, but the human quiet arrived, the listening quiet. Callum gave a short laugh. "What?" Graham stepped closer and said, "You heard me." Blythe appeared behind him. Daphne came from the dining room, still holding her coffee cup. Everett stood near the den door. Callum looked around, annoyed now. "Why are you bringing that up?" "Because I have listened to you. Let this family believe your wife came here with her hand out." My fingers tightened on my coat button. Blythe's eyes moved to me. "Graham." "No," he said, without looking away from Callum. "I witnessed one of those schedules. I want to know where the agreement is." Callum's face changed. For 1 second, the practiced husband disappeared, and I saw the frightened man from my sofa years earlier, the man with collection notices in his jacket pocket. Then pride returned. "That document is private." So was her humiliation, until you made a seating chart. Daphne lowered her cup. Everett muttered, "What schedule?" Graham ignored him. "If you are so sure she came for your money, Callum, where is the prenup?" Nobody spoke. I looked at Graham. He did not look triumphant. He looked tired. Callum's voice went low. "This is not your business." Graham tapped his cane once. "It became my business when my signature was used to support a truth you have buried." Blythe looked genuinely confused now. That mattered. Blythe had been cruel that day, but she had not known everything. She had believed what Callum let her believe because believing it made her treatment of me feel justified. "What is he talking about?" she asked. Callum said, "Nothing." I put my coat on. Then I said, "It is in the safe at home." Everyone looked at me. I met Callum's eyes. "I am going home now. You can finish Thanksgiving with the seating arrangement you wanted." His face was red. "Verity." "Do not make this awkward," I said. Then I left. The cold outside felt clean. I sat in my car for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel, watching through the windshield as warm yellow light filled the Pierce windows. In another life, I might have cried there. In that moment, I did not. I opened my phone and took 3 notes. Time left, 6:42. Seating chart photographed. Graham asked about prenup in hallway with witnesses. Then I drove home. The house was dark when I arrived. Our house, not his kitchen, not his proof of having rebuilt, not the stage where he could be admired for stability someone else funded. Our house. I placed the leftover slice of pumpkin pie on the kitchen island and stood there for a long minute. The pie looked small and sad in its foil, like evidence from a crime too domestic for police. Then I went upstairs to the closet safe. The blue binder was exactly where I had left it. Pierce Hale prenuptial agreement. Signed, notarized, attached schedules, closing wire confirmation, debt payoff letters, lien release, email correspondence. The kind of paper people resent until it tells the truth they tried to bury. I carried it downstairs and set it beside the pie. For a while, I only looked at it. That is the thing about documents, they are quiet until someone lies loudly enough to wake them. At 9:15, Blythe called. I let it ring. Then I answered on speaker because Nola had told me to document without dramatizing. "Verity," Blythe said, her voice tight, "I think we need to clear the air." I looked at the blue binder. That would be wise. There was a pause. She had expected apology, maybe guilt, not agreement. Callum is very upset. Graham embarrassed him in front of everyone. Graham asked a question. It was Thanksgiving. Yes, I said. That is why I remember where I was seated. Another pause. Blythe lowered her voice. Daphne should not have been beside him. I can admit that. That is a beginning. She exhaled. I did not understand there was some legal history. Legal history is one phrase for it. Could you come over this afternoon? Just family, no drama. No, I said. No, I will come with Nola Keene, my attorney. If the family story has involved a legal document, the correction can involve the person who drafted it. Blythe's voice sharpened. Verity, that sounds unnecessary. So did moving my chair. She said nothing. I continued, calm enough to surprise myself. 3 o'clock. If Callum wants the record corrected privately, I will do that. If not, I will keep the documents private and proceed through counsel. Proceed with what? That depends on what your son has misrepresented. I ended the call before she could turn confusion into insult. Callum came downstairs 20 minutes later in yesterday's sweater and a face full of injured pride. He saw the binder and stopped. What are you doing? Correcting the record. He rubbed his eyes. Verity, please do not bring lawyers into my parents' house. Your parents brought Daphne into my seat. That is different. Yes, I said. One was childish. This is documented. He came closer, lowering his voice like the walls might testify. You are going to make me look pathetic. I looked at him then. Callum, I paid your debt. I protected your future income. I funded most of the down payment on this house. And you let your family call me a gold digger until they felt righteous enough to put me beside paper napkins. You made yourself look pathetic. I kept the paperwork quiet. His mouth tightened. You always do this. What? Act calm while you cut. There it was again, the magic trick. My truth became cruelty because he bled when it touched him. I am not cutting, I said. I am removing the costume. He looked at the binder. If you loved me, you would not humiliate me like this. I closed the binder slowly. If you loved me, there would be nothing to correct. He left the kitchen. At 2:30, Nola arrived wearing a gray coat and carrying a leather folder. She looked around the house once. Lawyers notice houses differently, not the furniture, the ownership. Nice kitchen, she said. I have been told it belongs to Callum. Her eyebrow rose. Then Callum will enjoy Schedule B. At 3 o'clock, we walked into the Pierce house. The Thanksgiving decorations were still up. The dining room smelled faintly of coffee, gravy, and flowers starting to go tired in their vase. The main table had been cleared, but not completely. A few serving pieces remained on the sideboard. The seating chart was gone. Of course it was. Blythe greeted Nola like a woman accepting a dental procedure. Everett and his wife were there. Daphne was there too, which told me everything I needed to know about whether this was meant to be a family correction or another performance. Callum stood near the fireplace, arms crossed. Graham sat at the head of the dining table. His cane rested against his chair. He looked at me and gave one small nod. I placed the blue binder on the table. Not on a sideboard, not near the kitchen, on the table. The same place Daphne had sat the day before. Nola remained standing beside me. Blythe said, I think we all got emotional yesterday. No, I said. Yesterday everyone got revealing. Daphne gave a small laugh. Verity, that seems a little dramatic. I looked at her. You sat in my chair at Thanksgiving beside my husband. Dramatic had a place card. Her smile disappeared. Callum said, can we not start with blame? Nola opened her folder and said, we can start with documents. The room changed again. Families that live on tone hate paper. Paper does not care who sounds wounded. Nola introduced herself, though everyone knew who she was by then. She explained that she had drafted the Pierce-Hale prenuptial agreement before the marriage. She explained that the document was private, but because Callum had allowed or encouraged material misstatements about the nature of the agreement and Verity's financial role in the marriage. Verity was choosing to clarify limited facts in front of the people affected by those statements. Everett shifted in his chair. Material misstatements. Nola looked at Callum. For example, Th. He claimed that Verity married Callum for money, or used the prenup to control his assets. Blythe's face flushed. Callum said, I never said it like that. Graham's voice came from the head of the table. You said she had you locked down so tight a man could not breathe. Callum turned. Dad, Graham continued, you said every dollar came with a leash. The room went still. That was Callum's problem. He thought older men forgot things they did not interrupt. Nola opened the binder. This is the signed agreement. We are not reading the entire document. We are reading the attached schedules relevant to the false financial narrative. Daphne crossed her arms. Is this really necessary? I looked at her. Yesterday I was necessary enough to cook. Today I am necessary enough to speak. Nola removed the first schedule. Schedule A, she said. Premarital debt settlement and lien release. This schedule records that Verity Hale paid $84,700 to settle business debt associated with Callum Pierce's prior catering venture and secure release of a lien attached to equipment and vendor claims. Everett's wife looked at Callum. Everett blinked. What catering debt? Callum's face had gone pale. Nola placed the debt payoff letter on the table. Here is the settlement confirmation. Here is the lien release. Here is the cashier's check copy. Nobody reached for it at first. Then Graham did. His hand was steady as he pulled the paper closer. Blythe whispered, Callum. He looked at the wall. Nola continued. Schedule B separate contribution toward marital residence. Verity Hale wired $162,000 from separate premarital assets toward the down payment and closing costs of the residence held by Verity Hale Pierce and Callum Pierce. Blythe sat down. She did not mean to. Her body simply chose the chair before her pride finished standing. Daphne looked at Callum. For the first time, she did not look amused. Nola placed the wire confirmation beside the lien release. "This is the house?" Everett asked. I answered, "Yes. The one he said you made him buy because you wanted something nicer." I looked at Callum. He closed his eyes. Everett made a sound under his breath that was not quite a laugh. "Man." Blythe turned to Callum. "You told me the trust required that house." Callum said nothing. Nola did not soften. Schedule C states that Verity Hale waived any claim to Callum Pierce's future business income, commissions, bonuses, or ownership interests, and that Callum Pierce and any creditors connected to him would have no claim against the Hale family trust. Blythe's voice was small now, so the prenup protected him. It protected both parties, Nola said, but the idea that it was designed because Verity wanted Callum's money is not supported by the document. The document shows the opposite. Graham tapped the page in front of him. "Here," he said. Everyone looked. His finger rested beside his own signature. "I witnessed this schedule," he said. "I remember asking if you were sure." Callum opened his mouth, then closed it. Graham looked at his son with a sadness that felt heavier than anger. "You did not marry a woman who wanted your money. You married a woman who made sure you still had a name to sign." That sentence landed in the room like a dish breaking. Blythe covered her mouth. Daphne stared at the table. Callum finally spoke. "I was ashamed." I nodded once, yes. His eyes snapped to mine. "You do not understand what it felt like. Your family has had money forever. You have no idea what it does to a man to need his wife like that." There it was, not apology. Explanation sharpened into accusation. I kept my voice even. "I know what it does to a man who is honest. I am learning what it does to one who is not." His face twisted. "You think you are so clean because you keep records." "No," I said. "I keep records because people like you make clean women look dirty when memory is left alone." Nola glanced at me, not warning exactly, more like a quiet note that I had said enough. But I had one more thing. I opened my phone and placed the photo of the seating chart on the table. The cream cardstock, Daphne beside Callum. My name crossed out and moved near the kitchen. "This was not confusion," I said. "This was a decision." Blythe closed her eyes. Daphne said, "I did not make the seating chart." "No," I said. "You only sat where you knew I belonged." Her cheeks flushed. Callum snapped, "Do not attack her." The entire room heard it, the speed of his defense, the instinct, the choice. I looked at him for a long moment. "Thank you," I said. He frowned. "For what?" "For making the answer simple." Graham pushed his chair back. "Callum, apologize to your wife." Callum looked at him like he had been slapped. Blythe whispered, "Callum." Daphne looked toward the doorway, suddenly very interested in leaving. Callum's voice was low. "I am sorry you felt humiliated." Nola inhaled quietly through her nose, a lawyer's prayer for patience. I almost smiled. "No," I said, "that is not an apology, that is a weather report." His jaw clenched. I stood. "I came here to correct the record. The record is corrected." Blythe reached for me then, not touching, just reaching. "Verity, I am sorry. I did not know." I looked at her. I believed that she did not know the whole truth. I also believed she knew enough to be kind and chose not to. "You did not know the numbers," I said. "You knew where you seated me." Her hand dropped. Graham stood slowly with his cane. "Verity," he said, "I am sorry." I looked at him. His apology did not ask for rescue. It did not explain itself. It did not try to cover the whole family with one sentence. It stood there alone and took the weather. "Thank you," I said. Then I picked up the binder. Callum followed me into the hallway. "Do not leave like this," he said. I turned around. Like what? Like everything is decided. Everything was not decided by the binder. It was decided yesterday when you looked at my face and told me not to make your cruelty awkward. His eyes watered then. I hate that part. I hate that tears can arrive after the damage and still make the room ask the injured person to soften. "I panicked," he said. "Daphne being there was complicated. Mom wanted things easy. I did not know how to manage it." "You managed me." He flinched. I continued, because I needed him to hear the plain version. "You let your family believe I married you for money because it made you feel less ashamed of needing mine. You let Daphne sit beside you because being wanted by the past felt easier than being known by your wife. And when I saw it, you asked me to protect the room from the truth." He wiped his face with one hand. "She means nothing." "That is worse," I said. He looked confused. "If she meant something, at least you risked our marriage for love. If she meant nothing, then you humiliated me for applause." He had no answer. I left with Nola. In the car, she did not start the engine right away. "That was clean," she said. "It does not feel clean." It never does when the truth had to walk through gravy. I laughed because I needed to, then cried because my body had waited until a safe witness was present. Nola handed me tissues from the glove box. Of course she had tissues. She was a family attorney in the American South. Her car was probably legally required to contain tissues and bottled water. "What now?" I asked. "Now you decide whether you want separation, counseling, enforcement, or time. What would you advise?" "As your attorney, gather documents and protect accounts. As someone who has watched many versions of this room, I would say a man who lets others call your generosity a leash will keep chewing through kindness until you stop feeding him rope." I looked out the window at the Pierce house. Through the dining room window, I could see Daphne putting on her coat. Good, not satisfying, good. 2 weeks later, I filed for legal separation. Not divorce yet, separation. I needed air, records, and time. Nola filed a notice preserving rights under the prenup, including reimbursement provisions tied to material misrepresentation and financial concealment. Callum was furious at first, then scared, then apologetic, then angry again. Shame has weather systems. Blythe sent a handwritten note. "Verity, I am sorry for where I seated you and for what I allowed myself to believe. I should have asked better questions. I hope someday I can apologize in person, but I understand if that day is not soon." It was better than I expected. I did not answer immediately. Some apologies need to sit unopened long enough to become about repair instead of relief. Everett texted once. "I was an ass, no excuse, I am sorry." That one I answered. "Thank you, Daphne sent nothing." That was also an answer. Graham came to my office 3 weeks after Thanksgiving. He called first, asked permission, and arrived with a small paper bag from a bakery near his house. "I brought apple turnovers," he said. "Not as payment, just nerves." I let him in. He looked older than he had at Thanksgiving, or maybe I had stopped seeing him only as Callum's father. He sat across from my desk and took off his cap. "I should have spoken sooner," he said. "Yes," he nodded, "that is fair." He did not defend himself. That made the silence easier. "I knew enough to suspect Callum had twisted things," he said. "I did not know all the numbers, but I knew my son. I knew his pride. I knew your name was on that schedule because I signed it. I let the jokes go because I told myself marriage was not my business." He looked down at his hands. "Then I watched you serve food from a folding table." My throat tightened. He continued, "There are moments a man realizes neutrality was just cowardice. We are in church clothes." I looked out the window for a second. "What do you want from me, Graham?" "Nothing," that answer surprised me. "I came to say I am sorry, without asking you to make me feel better." That was the first apology from a Pierce that did not try to climb into my lap. I accepted the turnovers. I did not accept the family back, those were different things. Winter came. Separation made the house strange. Callum moved into a short-term rental near his office. The first week, every room felt too large. The second week, I noticed how peaceful the mornings were without measuring his mood before coffee. The third week, I took Daphne's crystal bowl from the dining cabinet, wrapped it carefully, and donated it to a charity auction for the culinary training program where I had met Callum. That felt right. Let someone else use it without ghosts. The legal process moved slowly because real life does. There was no dramatic judge awarding me everything because I had been wronged. There were disclosures, valuations, letters, negotiations, and the long administrative ache of untangling two lives that had shared a mailbox. The prenup held. Not magically, not without argument, but it held because Nola had written it for the day charm stopped working. The debt payoff was documented. The down payment was documented. The reimbursement provisions were enforceable enough that Callum's attorney advised settlement instead of performance. Performance had been Callum's favorite language. Paper was not impressed. He tried counseling once. We met in a therapist's office with soft lamps and a box of tissues placed exactly where broken people could see it. Callum said he wanted to rebuild trust. The therapist asked what trust meant to him. He said, not being punished forever for one mistake. I looked at him and felt the answer settle before I spoke. One mistake was not moving the chair back. The betrayal was letting your family think I was the reason you felt small. The therapist waited. Callum looked at the floor. I knew then. Not because he was evil, he was not. That is what makes some endings harder. Callum could be tender. He could be funny. He could remember the exact tea I liked when I was sick. He could cry at old songs and help neighbors carry heavy boxes. He could also let the woman who saved him be humiliated because the truth threatened his pride. People want villains to be whole. Most are not. They are decent in small places and dangerous in the places where honesty costs them status. I filed for divorce in March. By then, the maple outside the kitchen window had tiny red buds at the tips. I stood at the sink one morning, saw them, and realized I had not thought about Daphne for 3 days. That felt like progress. Not dramatic progress. Real progress. The kind that arrives without announcing itself. Callum signed the settlement in June. He reimbursed part of the down payment according to the agreement structure. I kept the house, not because revenge demanded it, but because the documents and numbers made it practical. He kept his retirement accounts and future commissions. I kept my separate assets. The debt I had paid remained paid, which was bitter and merciful at the same time. Some gifts cannot be unwritten. They can only be stopped from becoming weapons. The Pierce family fractured quietly. Blythe stopped inviting Daphne to family holidays, at least according to Graham. Everett apologized again at the divorce signing when we crossed paths in the parking lot. He said, I thought I was teasing Callum, not helping him lie. I believed him enough to nod. Graham and I did not become close. This is not that kind of story. But every few months he sent a short note. No pressure. No family updates unless I asked. Once he mailed me my serving spoon, the one I had left at Thanksgiving, wrapped in newspaper with a note that said, this should have been returned before anything else. I cried over that spoon. Not because of silverware. Because someone had finally understood that the small things were not small. The next Thanksgiving, I did not go anywhere near Hendersonville. I hosted 4 people in my own house. Mara, Nola, my neighbor June, and June's college-age daughter who could not afford to fly home. We made too much food. We burned the first tray of rolls. We ate at the dining table with mismatched napkins because I realized I hated the blue ones Blythe had asked me to iron. There was no seating chart. I placed the chairs where people naturally landed. Mara sat closest to the kitchen because she liked stealing crispy bits from pans. Nola sat facing the window because she claimed lawyers should always see exits. June's daughter sat beside me and asked about nonprofit work. I told her the unglamorous parts first. At the center of the table, I placed my grandmother's gravy boat. It was not fancy, White ceramic, small chip near the handle, older than me. Odette used it ever. Why Thanksgiving of my childhood, even when there were only 3 of us? She believed gravy deserved a proper vessel because comfort should be honored, even when life was hard. Before we ate, Mara raised her glass. To Verity, she said, who did not lose her seat. I shook my head. No, I said, to everyone who stopped asking the wrong table to make room. They drank to that. Later, after everyone left and the kitchen was warm with the smell of leftovers, I stood alone by the sink. The house was quiet, but not empty. That distinction mattered. I thought about the folding chair near the kitchen doorway. I thought about Daphne's hand near Callum's plate. I thought about Graham's question in the hallway. I thought about the blue binder, still in the safe, no longer a threat or a shield, just a record. For a long time, I believed dignity meant staying calm, while other people decided where I belonged. I was wrong. Dignity is not accepting the folding chair. Dignity is knowing you can stand up from it without knocking anything over. Before you go, tell me this. If your husband gave your seat to his ex-wife after you cooked for his whole family, would you stay for dessert or leave before coffee? And tell me your name and the city you are watching from. I want to know where this story found you.